Welcome back to the Journeyman Podcast. Everyone hit that like and subscribe button if you wouldn't mind so you don't miss any of our deep dives into really fascinating topics. Today's episode 41. And let me tell you, this one is a wild one. We are going to unpack the story of Andrew Tate's arrival in Florida and the whirlwind of legal trouble that followed.
Oh, yeah, it's a doozy.
To help us make sense of this tangled web, we have our expert here with us today.
Happy to be here.
Buckle up, because things are about to get interesting.
Yeah, this is a story that I think really throws a spotlight on the complexities of our legal system, especially in this day and age with social media and everyone's making instant judgments. You know, it's hard.
Yeah, exactly. We're talking about a U.S. citizen, Andrew Tate, landing in his home state after a 3-year investigation in Romania that ultimately resulted in no convictions.
Right.
You would think he'd be met with open arms.
Yeah, you would think so. You would think.
Instead, he walks right into a legal firestorm.
He's incredible, isn't it?
It's mind-boggling how quickly things escalated.
Yeah.
As soon as the Tate brothers, Andrew and Tristan, touched down in Florida, the online world erupted.
Oh, yeah.
We saw what Candace Owens refers to as the neocons voicing immediate outrage.
Huge backlash.
Yeah, and it didn't stop there.
Yeah.
Governor DeSantis publicly declared that Tate was not welcome in Florida.
Yeah.
And then Attorney General James Uthmeier dropped the bombshell. A preliminary inquiry was launched.
Wow.
And it just kept snowballing. Within days, search warrants were being executed, subpoenas were flying. It's like they were just waiting for him to land, just pounce.
Yeah, the intensity of the backlash is really what's striking here. You know, it seems to go far beyond standard legal procedure.
Right.
There's this sense of urgency, almost like a preemptive strike.
It feels very premeditated.
Yeah, very much so.
You have to imagine the shock that Tate must have felt. He comes to America expecting due process, a chance to clear his name after years of legal battles, and instead he gets his electronics confiscated right at the airport.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Tate's reaction to all this speaks volumes, you know. He went from expressing this faith in the American justice system to feeling completely betrayed by it.
It's a huge turnaround.
Yeah.
He's been very vocal, calling the investigation politically motivated.
Mm-hmm.
He claims there are concerns that he might endorse a rival candidate, Byron, who's running against DeSantis' wife in the upcoming Florida gubernatorial election.
Right.
Which is interesting because Tate has also aligned himself with Trump.
Yeah.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
you know, it suggests this potential clash of ideologies and power dynamics.
Yeah.
You know, Tate aligning himself with Trump and potentially supporting a Trump-backed candidate poses a direct challenge to the DeSantis camp.
For sure, and this is where Candace Owens' perspective gets really fascinating.
Yeah.
In her interview with Tate, she absolutely slams the investigation, calling it a politically driven attack.
Yeah, she doesn't hold back.
No, she doesn't. And she makes a strong point, I think, about the potential hypocrisy here.
Yeah.
You know, she compares the swift action against Tate to the perceived leniency shown in other cases, particularly those involving powerful or politically connected individuals like Jeffrey Epstein, who, as we all know, was convicted of crimes against minors right here in Florida.
Right.
But nothing like this happened to him.
No, it definitely raises questions about double standards and selective outrage. You know, is this truly about justice being served, or are there other forces at play?
Yeah, it really begs the question, are certain individuals being targeted for their opinions, particularly if those opinions disrupt the established narrative?
Yeah, it's interesting.
And Tate's open support for Palestine and criticism of Israel, a stance he and Owens both claim led to a shift in conservative opinion against him, becomes a key factor here.
Wow. So we're seeing this potential collision of political maneuvering, freedom of speech, and the power of online narratives.
Right.
Tate's pro-Palestine views, which are undeniably controversial in certain circles, might have made him a target for those who disagree with his stance.
Yeah, and it's crucial to consider the potential implications for free speech and dissent.
Yeah.
Is there a growing trend of silencing voices that challenge the status quo, particularly those with significant online influence?
It's a good question, and Tate's response to all of this?
What is it?
Defiance.
Yeah, how so?
He's staying put in Florida, asserting that his electronics contain no incriminating evidence.
Oh, wow.
He's essentially challenging the authorities, saying, if you have something concrete, arrest me, otherwise back off.
It's a bold move.
Very bold.
That reflects his belief in his own innocence. I mean, he's demanding due process, challenging the authorities to prove their case with solid evidence rather than relying on speculation and public pressure.
It's a big gamble.
Absolutely it is.
This whole situation brings us to a fundamental question. How do we ensure due process and the presumption of innocence in an age of social media where judgment is instantaneous and often harsh? How do we prevent trial by social media from overshadowing the principles of a fair and impartial legal process?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. How do we navigate this hyper-connected world of instant judgment and viral accusations while safeguarding the fundamental right to a fair and impartial legal process?
Yeah, it's a slippery slope, when public opinion starts to influence legal action.
Right.
We got to be careful not to fall into this trap of trial by social media where accusations take the place of evidence and due process becomes an afterthought.
It's like we're living in this bizarre reality show where legal proceedings and public spectacle are all blurred together.
Totally.
You have politicians issuing statements, you have influencers shaping narratives, and the whole thing is playing out in real time on social media.
That's the peril of this hyper-connected world, right? Information spreads like wildfire, often without any proper context or verification.
Yeah.
And then you add political agendas and personal biases to that mix,
Yeah.
and it becomes almost impossible to separate truth from noise.
It's impossible. And it's bigger than just Tate. This case, regardless of the outcome, raises broader concerns about this intersection of politics, justice, and online influence. Yeah.
Are we creating a system where anyone with a controversial viewpoint can be targeted, their reputation tarnished, their lives disrupted based on accusations fueled by social media frenzy?
It's a chilling thought. It really is, and one that demands careful consideration, I think.
Yeah.
We can't let fear or political expediency or the desire for online validation override our commitment to, the fundamental principles of justice.
Right.
Innocent until proven guilty, the right to a fair trial. These are the cornerstones of a free and just society.
For sure.
We need to defend those principles fiercely, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it involves individuals we may not personally agree with.
It's tough. It's so easy to get caught up in the outrage to jump on the bandwagon of condemnation.
Right.
But we have to step back and critically analyze the situation and demand evidence, not just accusations.
Absolutely, and we have to be willing to examine our own biases, too.
Yeah, are we forming opinions based on facts and evidence? Or are we allowing ourselves to be swayed by, emotionally charged narratives and carefully curated online personas?
That's tricky.
It's a constant challenge, especially in this digital age where information just bombards us from all sides.
Yeah, for sure. But it's more important than ever to cultivate critical thinking skills, to question the information we consume, and to demand transparency and accountability from those in positions of power.
Yeah, bring it back to Tate, regardless of how you feel about him.
Yeah.
It's crucial to remember that he, like every citizen, is entitled to due process.
Right.
He deserves a fair and impartial investigation,
Right.
not one driven by political agendas or the court of public opinion.
Absolutely. And let's not forget, he's never been convicted of a crime.
That's right.
He's been investigated, scrutinized, but never convicted. And that's a vital piece of context that often gets lost in this whole rush to judgment.
It does.
It's the foundation of our legal system, the presumption of innocence. It's not about protecting criminals.
Right.
It's about safeguarding the rights of every individual, ensuring that no one is unjustly condemned without a fair and thorough legal process.
So what does this all mean for us, the average person trying to navigate this crazy world?
Yeah, it's tough.
I think it comes down to this. Be skeptical, be informed, and be engaged.
I like that.
Don't let yourself be manipulated by sensationalized headlines or emotionally charged narratives.
Right.
Dig deeper, research the facts, consider different perspectives, and form your own informed opinions.
And don't be afraid to challenge the status quo.
Yes.
To speak out against injustice, even when it's unpopular.
Yeah.
But do it with reason, with evidence, and with a commitment to truth and fairness.
That's how we navigate this complex world. That's how we hold those in power accountable. And that's how we ensure that justice prevails, not just for Andrew Tate, but for everyone.
Well said.
So in this particular case, we have Andrew Tate, who has a history of very controversial opinions and behavior.
Yeah.
There's a lot of baggage there,
Sure.
and that's undeniable. But does that justify circumventing due process?
That's a good question.
Does that mean we just discard the presumption of innocence?
That's the core dilemma here, isn't it?
It is.
How do we reconcile our personal feelings, our moral judgments, with our commitment to upholding the principles of a fair and just legal system?
It's hard.
It's not always easy, especially when dealing with individuals who evoke such strong emotional responses.
And that's where the danger lies, right?
I think so.
When we let our emotions, our preconceived notions, kind of dictate how we view the legal process.
Right, yeah.
It's tempting to say, well, he's probably guilty anyway, so who cares if the investigation was a little shady?
Right.
But that's a dangerous road to travel.
It sets a precedent, erodes the very foundations of justice, and ultimately leaves everyone vulnerable.
Wow.
You know, if we can disregard due process for someone we dislike, then it can be disregarded for anyone,
Right.
regardless of their beliefs, their background, or their actions.
And that's what we need to fight against. We need to be champions for fairness, for justice, for due process, even when it's difficult, even when it involves someone like Andrew Tate, who, may not be the most sympathetic figure.
Because in the end, it's not about Tate. It's about the principles. It's about ensuring that our legal system remains a beacon of fairness and impartiality, a system that protects the rights of all citizens, regardless of their popularity or their opinions.
Powerful stuff. And it's a reminder that in this age of instant judgment, it's more important than ever to be vigilant, to be critical thinkers, and to demand justice, not just for ourselves, but for everyone.
Couldn't agree more. We can't afford to be complacent. We need to be active participants in safeguarding the principles that underpin a free and just society.
For sure.
And that starts with education, with engagement, and with the willingness to speak truth to power even when it's uncomfortable.
Beautifully said. And for those of you who want to go deeper into this rabbit hole, we've got some links in the episode description. You can also head over to Candace Owens' channel. She's got some insightful commentary on this whole situation. And while you're at it, do us a favor, subscribe to her channel and ours. You'll get more deep dives like this, exploring the complexities of our world, challenging assumptions, and sparking those aha moments.
Yeah.
It really boils down to this critical question: are we as a society willing to compromise our principles for the sake of expediency? Are we so quick to condemn those that we find undesirable that we're willing to overlook potential injustices in the process?
It's a dangerous path to tread, the erosion of due process, the weaponization of public opinion. These are serious threats to the very fabric of our democracy.
Yeah.
We must remain vigilant in defending these principles, not just for ourselves, but for everyone.
So let's take a step back and kind of recap here. We have Andrew Tate, a highly controversial figure with a huge online following, landing in Florida, only to be hit with this immediate and aggressive legal response. There are claims of political motivations, concerns about suppressing dissenting voices, and questions about the integrity of the legal process itself.
It's a multifaceted situation with really far-reaching consequences.
Yeah.
It forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about our own biases, our tendency to accept narratives without sufficient evidence, and the potential for abuse of power within our justice systems.
This entire situation shines a spotlight on a really crucial question for our time in an age dominated by social media and instant judgment. How can we ensure fairness and due process for all, even those with controversial public profiles?
It's a question that requires our attention, our critical thinking, and our active engagement. We can't afford to be passive bystanders in this unfolding drama.
Right.
We need to be informed, we need to be skeptical, and we need to demand accountability from those in positions of power.
We need to be prepared to challenge the prevailing narratives, dig deeper, ask tough questions, and stand up for the principles of justice, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it involves someone we might not personally like or agree with.
Because in the end, it's not about Andrew Tate.
It's not.
It's about the integrity of our institutions, the preservation of our fundamental rights, and the kind of society we want to live in, a society that values fairness, due process, and the presumption of innocence.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener for me, and I hope it has been for our listeners as well.
Yeah.
It really highlights that the intersection of justice politics and online influence is a very slippery slope.
Yeah.
And we need to be extremely cautious not to fall into that trap of trial by social media.
It raises the question, are we willing to sacrifice our principles for the sake of expediency? Are we so quick to condemn those we deem undesirable that we overlook potential injustices? These are profound questions we must all consider.
And here's one final thought for you to ponder. In an age dominated by social media and instant judgment, how can we as individuals contribute to a more just and equitable world? How can we ensure the due process is a reality for everyone, not just a select few?
It's a challenging question, but one we must grapple with if we want to live in a society where justice truly prevails.
Well, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Journeyman Podcast, episode 41. If you'd like to explore the source material we discussed today, you'll find the links in the episode description. And for more thought-provoking discussions like this one, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to check out Candace Owens' channel as well for her perspective on this and other important issues. We'll see you next time on the Journeyman Podcast.